Welcome to This Explainer. While everyone is completely obsessed with the loud headlines and the crazy price swings of retail crypto, a much more profound shift has been happening quietly behind the scenes. Today, we're bypassing all that retail noise to uncover the quiet revolution of institutional finance. We're going to see exactly how Wall Street is methodically adopting blockchain technology to completely rebuild its plumbing and solve trillion-dollar inefficiencies. Okay, let's talk numbers, and I mean absolutely massive numbers. In 2024 alone, DTC subsidiaries processed a staggering $3.7 quadrillion in legacy securities transactions. To put a quadrillion into perspective, because it's almost incomprehensible, a million seconds is about 12 days. A billion seconds, that's 31 years. But a quadrillion seconds, that is over 31 million years. That's the sheer scale of the legacy systems handling global capital markets right now. It's the bedrock of our economy, but it's running on reliable, yet fundamentally outdated, decades-old infrastructure.
Now, when you put that staggering quadrillion-dollar scale right next to digital assets, you realize something pretty surprising. Crypto is big, sure, growing rapidly to a $2 trillion market cap, but it's still just a tiny drop in the bucket compared to traditional financial markets like U.S. equities. So the goal for Wall Street here isn't to replace their system with crypto, not at all. It's about borrowing that underlying blockchain technology to upgrade their own massive existing frameworks.
Let's move into Section 1, Fixing Traditional Finance. So why exactly does a system processing quadrillions of dollars need an upgrade in the first place? Well, to answer that, we really need to look at the $11.9 trillion U.S. repo market. Basically, a repo is a collateralized short-term loan that keeps trading balances active. But traditional repo is plagued by four persistent headaches. Settlement timing often fails to align perfectly, which creates a ton of unnecessary funding pressure. Then, collateral allocation requires massive manual effort. The infrastructure itself is super fragmented across all these siloed platforms. But the absolute biggest issue? Settlement leg risk. It's the risk created by repeatedly unwinding and reestablishing positions. It's like trying to perfectly coordinate handing over cash while someone else hands you a car title. Actually, scratch that. It's more like doing that while you're both in completely different cities. It leaves both parties completely exposed right at the exact moment of exchange.
Enter atomic settlement. This is what institutions are looking at to solve that massive vulnerability. As defined by the European Central Bank, atomic settlement completely eliminates the risk of one party defaulting mid-exchange. Instead of a clunky multi-step process where one asset moves and then the other follows hours or even days later, atomic settlement ties them together. Either both legs of the transaction execute at the exact same time, or literally nothing happens at all.
The leap from legacy systems to this new standard is night and day. In legacy settlement, even with the recent upgrades to T+1, you still have a whole day where cash and collateral are moving separately. That's 24 hours of anxious waiting and capital just locked up, doing nothing. Canton Network's atomic settlement replaces all that anxiety with simultaneous, mathematically guaranteed execution.
Which brings us to Section 2, the privacy breakthrough.
Now, you might be wondering, if this tech is so incredibly efficient, why hasn't Wall Street already migrated everything to Ethereum or Bitcoin? Well, there was one absolute deal breaker keeping them off public blockchains: privacy. Seriously, institutions just cannot broadcast their trading strategies to the world. Imagine a major bank showing all its collateral positions in real time to its biggest competitors. Total disaster, right? Public Layer 1s operate on radical transparency. Every node sees every transaction. That's a huge no for Wall Street. That is exactly why the Canton Network's selective disclosure model is a total game changer. It gives institutions sub-transaction level privacy, sharing data strictly on a need-to-know basis. So how does this actually work? Let's walk through a four-step delivery versus payment, or DVP, transaction. It kicks off with command submission, but the real magic happens at step 2. The bank only sees the cash transfer, and the registrar only sees the asset transfer. Neither one sees the other's data, yet the global synchronizer can still validate the whole thing and push it to finality. It's brilliant. Privacy is perfectly preserved without giving up any of the benefits of the blockchain. All right, Section 3, expanding the perimeter. This highly secure, privacy-preserving infrastructure is now allowing digital assets to directly intersect with traditional liquidity pools, expanding what we can actually do on-chain. Why does traditional finance care so much about this intersection? Well, take a look at the collateral backing stablecoins today. Tether's Q2 2024 collateral shows nearly $81 billion directly invested in U.S. Treasury bills. And across the whole stablecoin market, We're looking at over $120 billion parked in treasuries. These stablecoins are acting as vital plumbing, creating a structural bridge right between the digital world and traditional government debt.
And guys, this isn't just theoretical anymore. DTCC has been methodically moving up what they call a ladder of evidence. They started with broad interoperability pilots back in March 2024, planned an app chain launch for April 2025, and are pushing straight toward a live production rollout in the first half of 2026. This is a highly controlled, phased implementation of tokenized U.S. Treasury securities. Wall Street is going all in. It's definitely not just DTCC either. Heavyweights in the payment space are stepping into the arena. Visa, for instance, is collaborating with Brainly to test private stablecoin settlements using the SBC stablecoin on the Canton network. They want to give massive financial institutions programmable money that settles instantly, but maintains the strict compliance and privacy controls that large-scale operations demand.
Looking down the road to 2027, DTC is planning to connect its tokenization service right into the public Stellar network. This unlocks 4 absolutely critical outcomes: slashing settlement times from days down to literally minutes, allowing assets to move freely across different digital venues, breaking free from the traditional 9-to-5 to enable 24/7 trading, and drastically lowering cost and risk overhead. That frees up a massive amount of capital that can be deployed elsewhere.
Which brings us to Section 4, a new security paradigm. Because let's be real, when you move quadrillions of dollars onto entirely new infrastructure, you are going to face an entirely new set of risks.
Since the Canton network uses the DOML smart contract language, which relies on an extended UTXO model, meaning assets act more like individual digital cash bills rather than an account-based ledger like Ethereum, we're dealing with brand new bug classes. Old vulnerabilities like reentrancy, they just don't exist here. Instead, developers are losing sleep over conservation violations, where inputs and outputs don't perfectly match, or temporal faults, where ledger time fuzziness causes a transaction to randomly abort. Traditional security tools are completely blind to these issues.
So, to combat this entirely different threat surface, security firms like OpenZeppelin have had to build completely new, multi-layered verification stacks from the ground up. They use DAML-Lint to catch structural anti-patterns, DAML-Props to run intense property-based testing for weird semantic bugs, and DAML-Verify to mathematically prove your smart contracts are airtight. It's a total reimagining of on-chain security, specifically for institutional finance.
And that leaves us with a really critical question to chew on. As this quiet revolution continues to reshape the quadrillion-dollar plumbing of global finance, moving us from siloed mainframes to synchronized blockchains, is your infrastructure ready for the new standard? Because ready or not, this shift is happening right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.